After hearing from Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban this week, Brian Kelly's probably thinking, what did I get myself into? We'll put Fisher and Saban to the side, of course, tonight. We'll talk LSU football as we head toward 2022. Got Lonn Phillips-Sullivan on the line from LSU Odyssey. We want to take your comments and questions. And so serve them up there in the live chat. And we will get right to it, talking Bayou Bengals. Lonn, how we doing tonight?
Doing good, doing good. How about you, my man? How about you?
I'm doing well. I feel good. Doing well.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, man. Of course. We're talking LSU football.
Let's go. Let's go, baby. Let's go.
So, Arch Manning. The Arch Manning tour has been announced. And as I understand it, it includes Texas, Alabama, Georgia. Yeah. But there are 2 spots available. And there's thought out there that LSU might be one of those 2.
I would be shocked if LSU did not get one of those final 2 spots. They've made at least some sort of push with Joe Sloan that has gotten them way further than the previous, regime would have been able to. And I feel like they've crossed some sort of Rubicon. It's obviously not anywhere close to LSU being the destination for Arch, but I feel like there's some progress there. And I feel like LSU will get that visit just because it's, the hometown, school of where all the Mannings grew up. And then Arch, had his greatest years in the NFL, New Orleans Saints. There's so much history in Louisiana with the Manning family. I think that will at least be enticing enough for Arch. What's up, Carter, and his family to check out.
Got Carter here from LSU Power Hour joining us for a little LSU talk tonight live. So again, comments and questions, get them there in the comments section. We'll pass them on. Carter, what's going on tonight?
What's up? Congrats, Lonn, on all your personal success, and congrats to you, Mark. I go on Florida State last week, and now hanging out with the fellow LSU guy. And of course, you saw what happened on your show last week, Mark. Got the Miami contingent out there going crazy. Hurricane Nation really thinks they got something going with Mario.
So now you know, Carter, why I have you guys on. In addition to your great insight and knowledge and the entertainment value, it's also to kind of rein everybody in, to quiet the crowd, help me contain these folks.
Yeah, it's great. I heard Lonn talking about the Mannings, and from a national perspective, Mark, from where you're sitting, everyone wants to talk about Arch, right? But it's just like everything else, right? If you're like a casual NBA fan, you only care about LeBron and Steph when the league is Ja Morant and Jordan Poole and all these other guys. And it's kind of the same thing as like an LSU YouTuber, because the number one question I get, I don't know about Lonn, is like Arch Manning questions. But it's interesting because like LSU's after all these other 5-star quarterbacks, and there's 2 other really good 4-star quarterbacks in Louisiana. So it's amazing like how layered sports can be.
Yeah, and of course his name is going to be the talent is obvious because the evaluations, the scouting reports back up the talent. But at the same time, the name is what it is. So yes, to your point, Carter, the periphery fans will latch on to Arch Manning. But how important is he to bring into the fold?
I don't think he's that important at all, right? Like you got to look at it this way, Mark. And this, and Lonn knows this, only one quarterback can play. So for me, LSU's got other quarterbacks that they're after. Who's to say Dante Moore is not better? He is a 5-star quarterback, albeit from the north. Is he actually going to come to LSU? I don't know. That's kind of a long shot, but it's also kind of not, because he has come down to LSU so much. Jaden Rashad is someone else that's been connected to LSU, a 5-star. And then, Eli Holstein, another top 100 4-star recruit. So yeah, Arch is obviously a really good talent, but it's not the end of the world if LSU misses out on that. And Lonn, as you've pointed out, you follow recruiting really closely. LSU is doing pretty good for 2024 quarterback, getting DJ Lagway, one of the best quarterbacks in 2024 on campus. So, it's not an all or nothing thing when it comes to the quarterback position.
So, Lonn, is it almost just as important to get the visit and show, hey, we are toe for toe with Georgia, Alabama, etc., than it is to get the actual player and just continue to be in that top 5 grouping of teams that everybody talks about, especially in the South when they talk about the elite of recruiting?
I mean, this is an optics world where everything is about how things look and how things appear. And if Kelly is, having these photos with him and Arch and the Mannings, whether we get Arch or not, it boosts, what LSU looks like as a quarterback school and how we can recruit quarterbacks now. And there's another name as well left out here, Ricky Collins. I feel like this young man has a big chance of showing up in an LSU uniform, and I think he's floating right there under the radar. Brian Wilson out of Chino Hills, another 2024 quarterback. Mabry Matower out of Texas. DJ Lagway, of course. There's a lot of crazy depth to the 2023 and 2024 quarterback rooms, and LSU already have a crowded quarterback room currently. So the dominoes are going to start falling, Carter and Mark. It's going to be very interesting as far as LSU and quarterbacks over the next few years.
Yeah, and that's a good point about Ricky Collins. Woodlawn, that's a school that hasn't produced like 1,000 LSU players, and he's kind of, because he's with Arch Manning, flown under the radar. And I think if LSU did up the ante and really went after Ricky Collins, Ricky would be very interested in LSU, knowing that he is committed right now to Purdue. And what's very interesting is Purdue, of course, has put some really good players into the NFL on the offensive side of the football. So, recruiting is so different now, obviously, with the transfer portal. Everyone watching this right now understands like how different recruiting is right now. But I do find this so fascinating now with Brian Kelly hitting the ground running, and Lonn wrote about it this weekend. He had another big recruiting weekend this past weekend, getting Tackett Curtis on campus, a top 100 linebacker from the state of Louisiana.
Big time getting
Before
him.
we move on to one of these questions, Lonn, maybe you should just go out and ahead and take off on the Tackett Curtis situation.
I can definitely do that. Tackett, it seemed like his recruitment was just at an impasse, when Kelly arrived. And I had been speaking to the family, and I kind of said, give this staff some patience, give them some breathing room. They're up to their neck in the waters of the Ed Orgeron regime. They're trying to figure out so much of this stuff, just layers upon layers of issues from Orgeron that they had to solve before they could even kind of start to recruit properly. And they gave him that patience, that chance. And Matt House is coming in. Went to a Manny practice, hung out with them, really got to know the family well. Coach Jess Curtis, Tackett's uncle, and Tackett, of course, and they just had rave reviews. And then Brian Kelly meets with them. Then they go down to Baton Rouge and have this crazy, awesome visit where Tackett's taking these photos. And getting those photos in my phone was pretty insane because I'd been waiting for Tackett to take those photos for some time, to finally, take a visit to LSU and really be recruited like he should. The last regime, it was an embarrassment the way they recruited him. And it's just great to see Kelly at least giving LSU a shot. Who knows if we'll sign him, but at least we're in the hunt now. And I just love where LSU are standing. Just heard nothing but rave reviews about Matt House.
Two of my favorites on board. Carter, LSU Power Hour. Get on over there. And you'll see it here in a second on the banner. Again, right here on YouTube. And then Lonn Phillips-Sullivan, LSU Odyssey. All right. John gets right to it here. I'm sure both of you will have much to say about this comment concerning Miles Brennan, I'm hearing a lot of on ESPN Radio Baton Rouge that Garrett Nussmeier is making a push for the starting job, but I think it's just smoke the coaches are making so he doesn't transfer.
Well, he actually played really damn well in the spring game. I mean, and I know it's a spring game, but just look at the way he was playing. Just look at the throws, the play extension. But then we all knew he could extend plays. We all knew he had a cannon of an arm, but just the way he was moving the chains, getting in a rhythm, it seemed like Nussmeier was way mature. He had taken that next step, but just the lack of game time and the uncertainty, all that stuff, it is very interesting with Nussmeier.
Yeah, and to add on to that, if you just watch the quarterbacks throw, like if you strip everything away and you don't look at their experience, you don't look at anything else, Garrett Nussmeier looks the best as far as the ball leaving his hands, as far as the ball getting out on time, as far as the zip on his passes, and especially if you compare him to Miles Brennan, he's also healthier, right? Garrett Nussmeier doesn't have injury history outside of injuring his finger at the end of his high school career, which, it's not a long-term fix per se. And, that's where it's really interesting. With Miles Brennan, you never know if he is going to actually be there. So it's very fascinating. Obviously, we know with Jaden Daniels mixed in there as well. Mark, I've been on your show quite a few times, and I still stand by it. I just am not sure if the coaches know what kind of quarterback that they want next year, who they want their quarterback to be next year. I think they're going through the pros and cons of all of it. And then at the same time, that benefits them because that allows those guys to all think that they might be the guy next year, which of course decreases their chances of packing their bags and going elsewhere.
Oh God, yeah. Oh God, yeah.
As John continues the quarterback conversation and takes it back a few years to Joe Burrow, it brings this topic to mind, and I want to relate it to the present. There are teams the stature and programs the stature of LSU that obviously have transcendent teams within its history that are high marks, but LSU has obviously made it to championship games and won national championships under its last three head coaches. So that was not an aberration from that standpoint. This program has the facilities, the resources, and the recruiting footprint to do it over and over and over and over again. But that LSU team of 2019 seems as though, for as great as it was, did it have a lasting positive impact on this program because of everyone scattering within 2 years later?
Absolutely. Everyone thought we lost everybody in one go, but we had I think something like 60 returning players or something, 60 plus heading into 2020. I don't know how many going in 2021, but 10 guys drafted, and most of them were from that 2019 team this last draft. I mean, you cannot say. I mean, we had our worst season ever. I mean, since in the 21st century, and worst, most diabolical season off the field as well, combined on the field. I guess you could say ever if you wanted to, but it was diabolical. But we still had 10 guys drafted, and that's still some of the best players on that team were 2019 guys who either matured or were finally getting their chance to play, or a lot of different situations going on. Some guys who even transferred and returned, things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? How do you replace all that talent? And you look historically, a lot of LSU's worst years or 8-win and under seasons guys came when they had a lot of guys drafted. So it's just another thing that Brian Kelly's going to have to overcome is, yes, he replenished the roster. Yes, it did help out that they were able to stretch out the 32-player roster limit. And this market, and I don't cover all the other schools as closely as you do, Mark, but I could say with near certainty that of all the teams that benefited the most from not only the transfer portal, but the extended 32 player roster limit that you can bring in for this last recruiting class, no program benefited more than LSU. Not a single one, because of where they were as a team with only 39-ish scholarship guys. And I posed this question, today on my channel, and it was, do you think LSU's best defensive back next year will be a transfer? And the irony of it is, as Lonn knows, more than likely they're going to be starting 4 out of 5 transfers in the secondary, if not 5 out of 5 guys. That is a very real possibility. So it's a very strange time at LSU, and it's so interesting that of all teams, LSU was the one that benefited probably the most in the SEC from the transfer portal.
Carter, I want to play off something you just said concerning your work and also Lonn's platform, because people are asking in the chat if we've got an LSU channel. Yes, we have an LSU channel, and of course, we want you to subscribe to our LSU channel.
Yeah,
it's running, up and running, and functional.
Do it
mostly
now.
because of these two guys right here. So this is the deal. Yes, we've got an LSU channel here, the Voice of College Football, and we want it to do well, and we would like you to subscribe, but it doesn't come close in any such way to what these two are doing. So if you want LSU football coverage, yes, we think what we bring some value there. And of course, in addition to their opinions, I produce videos there as well. But no. Get on over to LSU Odyssey, Lonn Phillips-Sullivan. Check out LSU Power Hour with Carter. These two guys are tremendous in covering LSU football. So in no way do you go first to our platform for LSU football. These guys are fabulous. They have helped us tremendously. So they are your source for LSU football. And so get on over there right now. LSU Odyssey, LSU Power Hour with Carter.
Mark.
All right.
Mark.
Athlons has been running a series. It was a few months ago leading into the spring, top 5 newcomers for each school. Who do we expect to make that impact for LSU? And amongst the newcomers, who tops that list? Carter, where are you going for that first and foremost?
Yeah, so obviously you start at the quarterback position, and if Jaden Daniels plays like 2019 Jaden Daniels and he is the guy, LSU will be a 9-win team. 8 or 9-win team at its floor. But if you get the last of what Jaden Daniels was doing last year, lots of turnovers, and a lot of that was Arizona State's dysfunction that added to that. If you get that Jaden Daniels mark, you're not going to win a lot of games. So, as far as newcomers are concerned, obviously Jaden Daniels would have the biggest impact if he is indeed the guy. But what's very interesting is there's a difference between like a transfer portal newcomer like a Greg Brooks or a Jarek Bernard Converse and a true freshman newcomer. And to me, Mark, the biggest story from the spring was a true freshman left tackle will be starting for LSU next year, and Will Campbell. So, as far as like the transfer portal guys, you feel pretty comfortable about a lot of those guys stepping in and being good. But as far as newcomers and their ceiling, Will Campbell, who was a top 50 recruit, one of the best offensive tackles ever in the state of Louisiana, to me, he's the guy that you got to look out for because he is going to be out there every single snap playing one of the most physically demanding positions in the sport.
Absolutely, with Will Campbell. I mean, the dude's about to be starting left tackle in the SEC as a freshman. I mean, get out of here. But I'm also to kind of switch from there. I'm gonna go with cornerbacks here. Mekhi Garner, could he be that shutdown corner that LSU were looking for? I mean, Brian Kelly, 5 feet away from me, called him an NFL cornerback. An NFL cornerback. He said he is an NFL cornerback. And that is mostly what I saw. I saw him get beat a few times and him unleash some expletives and just frustration and agony from getting beat. And then the next play, you'd be making some nice wrap-up tackle on Cole Taylor, a huge tight end. Or, I really want to see if Mekhi Garner can back up the hype, back up what we've seen. I think he can. I think he's that good. LaTerrence Welch, though. LT Welch is a freshman. Can he come in and provide some type of competition at cornerback? Can he come in there and maybe even start some games? It'll be very interesting to see how LSU, with injuries, things like that, how depth is affected at cornerback? Will we move Greg Brooks Jr. from nickel back to corner? He's someone to keep your eye on as well. Forced 4 turnovers during the spring. It was just a ball hawk everywhere. I really like to see Greg Brooks Jr. and see what he brings to the table. Mekhi Wingo, though, up front, DT, I think more than stat stuffing and stuff like that. I really think Mekhi Wingo can be an absolute beast up front who's just influential. Drawing those double teams, allowing, Ojulari, Guy, even Jaquelin Roy to really go in there and attack the quarterback. And, we're going to see Wingo really, I think, be an influential supporting role. Maybe off the bench more than starting, but I think Wingo will be pretty high impact newcomer. And at quarterback, Jaden Daniels, of course, but I so many questions with Jaden Daniels, so many things going on. And when I see him, there's so many directions I feel like his career as a Tiger could go. It's just, I think with the quarterbacks, like you were talking about, I think they're just going to see who the best man will be throughout all of summer and fall camp, and just finally pin it down. Maybe only even a week or so before week 1. We might not even know until they come out the tunnel or something like that. Who the hell knows, Carter? It'll be weird.
Yeah, and one thing to add on to that, the one position, Mark, over the last couple of seasons was that was injured the most was defensive back. And a lot of those defensive backs had injury history. So, once again, you go back to the transfer portal. LSU would be in a really, really, really bad spot if they did not have the portal. And to have all these defensive backs, which, you got to have in the SEC, LSU with DBU, you had that moniker. Hopefully these transfers, who, by the way, are all from Louisiana. Some of them were overlooked recruits. Some of them were those mystical 3-star Louisiana guys. Yeah. They all came back home. So we'll see how that experiment works. And if it does work really well, LSU will probably shift their recruitment and look more to some more Louisiana 3-stars that go perform elsewhere and come back home. And, you have fans. I saw a Florida fan in here, a little bit earlier. A few of Billy Napier's best players are Louisiana 3-stars, Osiris Torrance and Montrell Johnson. So, it's very interesting how that works. How many great, these hidden gems from the state of Louisiana go out and be great. And now you can come back home immediately if you want to play for the LSU brand. So it's a different world, Mark, as you've covered on your channel.
Every time one of you mentions the term DBU, I get a little glimmer in my eye and a little smirk on my face, not because I don't think it's true. I just think it's a great debate. You guys, obviously, you're in a certain position on DBU, LSU. I'm not debating that LSU is not DBU. I just think it's a tremendous discussion. I would love to pull some kind of panel together at some point and rep Ohio State and Florida and Miami and USC and on through history and pull that one together at some point and
let's do that
and do some work on that.
Carter,
we don't know how much exactly how much time we've got with you, but I do want your input on this one.
Right.
Okay. Even though it's not LSU related, it is. Fine. We saw words exchanged by 2 national championship coaches last week, and I've been watching sports for 45 years. Hate to date myself, but I am. I haven't seen anything like that ever. Mostly we know what the decorum of coaches are. They give respect to the other coaches. He's doing a great job, great program. We respect what he does. And it's usually by a coach's silence that we determine he must not like that guy because he's not saying much about him. But this NIL situation has brought out the best or the worst, however you want to frame it, when it comes to first Nick Saban firing the first shots, or we could even say Lane Kiffin after National Signing Day. And here we have Jimbo Fisher then really laying out some blunt terms. And again, if you guys can think of when 2 coaches have gone at it like this and using things like acts godlike and czar of college football, and we better look into his past and all those things.
Jose Mourinho.
Yeah.
So where LSU comes into this is, of course, who plays Texas A&M at the end of every year and is geographically bound to Texas A&M. And of course, Alabama LSU is at the center of college football each and every year as a event on the field. So LSU's kind of, can we see Brian Kelly possibly getting into some fisticuffs at some point?
Yeah, I think so, Mark. And before I get out of here, I will share this. It is very interesting that, Jimbo and Saban have, heavy ties to LSU. And I'll say this, there's a lot of LSU fans who enjoyed the fisticuffs. I enjoyed it myself. I found both of them to be completely out of touch. I found Nick Saban, especially going after Dion and Jackson State, to be, just the most bizarre thing. I found that one to be very weird because that was a clear punching down on the little guy. And I know Jackson State is
messed up,
like the premier HBCU program, but they're still the little guy. They have nowhere close to the resources that, even that Arkansas has, a middle tier SEC program. So I found that to be so weird. And I know Saban apologized directly after it. It was still just nuts. And then Jimbo and I understand I was just on the Florida State channel and I know LSU plays Florida State to do the Bobby Bowden thing and put Bobby Bowden up and then say all this other mumbo jumbo. It both of them look bad. Both of them weren't technically wrong that they so-and-so didn't do anything illegal and they didn't say, illegal or anything like that. It was still, no matter how you slice it, a really, really, really bad look. But Mark, thank you for letting me hang out. Lonn, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Mark, keep up the good work. I'm sorry for getting the Miami fans all fired up on the Florida State channel. Lonn, keep up the good work. Hopefully, LSU land some of those recruiting targets, and hopefully we do this again soon. We'll talk. How about that?
Absolutely.
Everybody subscribe to Carter's channel, especially if you love in-depth film study. It is some of the best you will see out there. I don't know how you get around the copyright stuff, bro, but you have to show me how you do that because it is sick. Carter, next level stuff, my man, and congrats on the engagement. Everything going for you, the trip to Europe, seeing Liverpool, your team, they're playing the Champions League final, man. It's going to be fun.
Let's go. We're winning it all in Paris this Saturday. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Carter. Appreciate you so much. Have a good one. Carter. All right. Yes, we will continue on. I guess I've got more than I thought to congratulate Carter for. So that's some good news there. Very nice.
Indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yes, when you can merge entertainment and the knowledge and information together, that's a phenomenal combination. Roger Dodger has subscribed there to Carter's channel, but also LSU Odyssey, of course, and that's the reason we've got Lonn here to break it down for us. Yeah, let's see what else we've got here in the chat, because I really wanted to get as much out of you as I possibly could, especially considering we've got official visits coming up throughout June. And
Christian Gray coming on June 3rd.
I'll let you cut loose on it, Lonn.
Man, that's a big time target for Robert Steeples, out of DeSmet, that's a player he used to coach, man, when he was the national high school coach of the year. Robert Steeples winning a state championship there in the state of Missouri. And he had such a crazy trajectory going from high school coach to NFL assistant for Minnesota, his former team. Brilliant man, Robert Steeples. Brian Kelly always said if he had another chance to hire him, he would take it. He got that chance to hire him, hires Robert Steeples, and Steeples goes and he heavily visited Christian Gray. There was a few visits where Christian Gray's already been to LSU, hanging out with Honey Badger, hanging out with all these LSU luminaries, watching the spring game. There's been a huge impact on Christian Gray, but at the same time, he's taken a ton of visits in a row. I think it was like Ohio State was next on the list and some other big school. He's loaded up. He's highly prized. If Robert Steeples pulls this off, which I think he has the inside track to do, Mark, it'll be something special. And he already got Dalen Austin in this class. He already got Jalen Davis Robinson in the last class to finish that class off with at least a little bit of cornerback help to buffer that cornerback room with a little bit of depth. But I really think Christian Gray, June 3rd, that'll be a very interesting visit to try and really try and get a commitment there, a verbal commitment.
Lonn, what do we think that Brian Kelly is selling that might be a little bit different than what Les Miles and Ed Orgeron sold concerning LSU football?
Academics. Because he understands that if he keeps these kids in the classroom, he's going to keep them out of trouble as well. He's going to keep them disciplined. He's going to keep them structured. He's going to keep them invested. And, I think at the same time, they're not, wanting every one of their players to be, going up with 7 engineering classes or whatever. We're not talking about something like that, but some actual practical application in your academics and actually staying in school, getting your degree, graduating as champions. That's something you see. That's been Brian Kelly's slogan. And I think that's attractive to parents. I think it's attractive to kids who know that football can be a very dangerous game. They see a lot of these young guys, retiring in their 20s now. They want to have some type of second option there. And, focusing on academics in this day and age is not a problem there, especially when you have a culture with, under Coach Ed Orgeron, under Les Miles, that was just ridden with academic issues. The academic issues when Brian Kelly came in was just a disgrace. It was a disgusting disgrace. But then you add the other word to his slogan, graduate champions. This is all about winning championships, not just one, not just 2, but continuing to build some type of dynasty at LSU. And I really think that 10-year contract, all of that gives Kelly a type of freedom to control, to dictate everything in the organization from LSU football operations, top to bottom, get what he needs out of the football athletic department with Scott Woodward. And I believe he's got all the resources he needs. It was very interesting, Mark, seeing up close in the flesh how Brian Kelly runs LSU. Night and day to the way Coach Ed Orgeron or Les Miles ran LSU. Ed Orgeron was a vast improvement over Les Miles. But then Brian Kelly is a vast improvement over Ed Orgeron. It's not even the same planet. It's not even the same universe of coaching styles. It's very disciplined and process oriented, and it's not about beating the chest. It's very cerebral. I'm liking what I'm seeing from Brian Kelly, and I think these recruits love that they thought that Kelly was this kind of crusty old man from Notre Dame, where his humility and he was very quiet and, the Notre Dame style, all that type of stuff, very stern, brisk, the cold weather, wearing those with the hat, they always have these images of his frosty red nose. Now you got him in sunglasses. He's all driving the Tesla. He's all dancing around like this and doing this Austin Powers stuff with Walker Howard. And
now that can backfire too. So it depends on your perception of it.
I'm just saying that, I think it's refreshing to 99.9% of the recruits, because they're like, whoa, I thought he was this kind of guy. Yeah. Now he's shown me that there's a different side to him, and there always was this different side to him. But it's like you said, the Danny Lewis thing. But at the same time, I don't think LSU were ever going to get Danny Lewis. I was one of the first to say he's going to Alabama. Was widely criticized for making that prediction, but it became true because I just felt the vibe. And so I don't think if Kelly danced or didn't dance, it would have had an effect there or not. But that's really only the one dance mishap that we've seen thus far that we know of, Mark.
Well, We want to remind everyone that you were down there, as you alluded to, for LSU spring practice and went down there for the week, got some tremendous interviews, news conferences with Brian Kelly, practice footage we're able to get, in addition to the tremendous information that you have day to day, the feel, the vibe, and really lock in on the program. I don't want to lead you in a wrong direction here, but did you tell me here in the last couple of weeks that you were planning on getting back down there in August?
Oh, probably even sooner than that.
Okay.
Probably like June, July. I mean, there's recruits who are like really wanting me to be there for the June 5th visit with the Texas Fury 7-on-7 team. There's a number of really talented players there, led by, of course, 2024's really top quarterback. I think a top 10 ranked quarterback. I'm not sure on those rankings, but Mabry Mettauer. I feel like he's a top 5 quarterback in the class, in my opinion. He's just unbelievable quarterback. I would love to go down there and see that recruitment firsthand. I'm not sure what I would be allowed to do with that type of stuff, but I was hoping for, going down there in June and July and seeing what's going down with LSU firsthand, especially, on both phases, LSU football operations 2022 and the recruiting side as well. Really got a lot planned in the pipeline for that.
Because if Brian Kelly, as you well know, is able to convince players more than anything, of course, because that's the relationship that he needs to build both in the current player status and then the future players, but the fan base as well, that he's a real guy, a sympathetic, engaging type of individual. Because if he can convince people of that, because to your point about the perception of the Brian Kelly in the 12-degree weather with the frostbitten nose and the staunch demeanor and all huddled and stern. If that gets dismissed, nobody questions this man's ability to coach a football team or run an organization. Nope. Because he is one of the very best when it comes to those two categories. And if he's able to, yes, show his personality, be engaging, be real to the players, then you've got a dynamo. You've got a guy who, I rated him one of the top 5 coaches in college football. And it's going to be interesting to see you, kind of form another layer of your perception of Brian Kelly and the way he runs his program, because I know that you were awfully impressed in your first go around during the spring. Our fans, do you think, the reasonable fans, there's always going to be the lunatics out there that demand 12-0 every year, but do you think that there's an understanding that this is going to take maybe a little bit of time to get it to be where LSU is supposed to be?
I think so. From most of the fans I talk to, it's about realism, facts. They want to know everything about LSU. They don't want any BS. They want to know exactly what's going on, the vibe, the pulse. And I think when they look at everything, how we've been hit in certain areas, it might take a few years for, like, say, college football playoff contention, things like that. But, at the same time, with evolving rules where maybe the division thing isn't really a big deal, LSU could survive a few losses and perhaps still make an SEC championship game if they get rid of divisions. That type of a crazy madness could really be beneficial as hell for Brian Kelly and LSU, because of just avoiding that, where either you beat Alabama each season or you're out, basically. But there's some tough games on the schedule here, Mark. I mean, even though LSU play, I think it's the first 5 out of 6 games basically at home in the state of Louisiana. Crazy. But then you've got road tests against Auburn, Florida, Arkansas, and of course, final game of the year, Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher casserole. Jimbo Fisher casserole. We got some casserole here. Oh, Jimbo Fisher.
Is there something I'm missing there with a casserole?
It's just the word I kept thinking when he was doing that press conference. Okay. We're going to eat some casserole, Saban. Don't you dare talk about my players. I don't know. It was hilarious. that was Jimbo Fisher to me, just the word casserole comes to mind.
I can see it. Jimbo he's accomplished a lot. He's obviously been thrown a ton of money to make Texas A&M great for one of the few times in its history, but to watch him respond to Saban, and I'm not going to pretend to know who's right or who's more right. I'm sure there's a little bit of correct, accurate information in both of their statements, and then there's also some not so correct information and perspective. So even if we cut it down the middle, he just doesn't always, for the stature that he has in the sport, not come across the best with the flailing hands and the ranting and raving.
Yeah, at the same time, like I think Jimbo almost like deserves some type of plaudits for like, okay, he enters the octagon. They're all saying, Jimbo, I don't think it's a good idea to do the press conference. He's like, we're doing it. I'm Jimbo Fisher. We're doing it. Damn it, we're doing it. And he goes out there and he enters the octagon. And he's taking on Saban, but I think he actually handled himself well. I think he wanted to jump off, into the abyss and tell every secret. He's about to say, you're going to find out what kind of guy he is. I'm going to tell you. You'll find out. You'll find out if you ask him or him or him. And almost like Saban's version. I mean, Jimbo's version of Saban saying, "I read it in the paper." Like another thing that Saban said was so stupid. I read it in the paper. You all can read this in the paper. It's like, what the hell are you talking about, Saban? Like, because you read it, I read it in the paper that it's just true that they bought every player. I can tell you for a fact they didn't buy Jake Johnson, Max Johnson's brother. There's no way in hell they bought him. So that's one player that just immediately kiboshes. He said every player. Right there, I got him on that fact. Just not true. There was some players I spoke to from Texas A&M who backed Jimbo. They loved how their coach defended them, defended the brand. You know how I feel about Texas A&M, but these are some people that I really care about who are going there right now at Texas A&M, and seeing that their program was attacked, that their very class was attacked, they took it personally, and they had no problem with Jimbo going, all Karen on Saban. But at the same time, I don't think it helped Jimbo's cause whatsoever. But what could he have said, Mark? How could he have done it? It seemed like he knew he had to make a point and throw down the gauntlet that everyone has been kissing this man's ass for far too long. Someone has to put their foot down, and it's going to be me. Everyone thought it was Coach Ed Orgeron. 2019 seemed like we did it. We put our foot down. We stomped Alabama. This is the end of Alabama's reign. And they immediately just made that look just kindergarten cop. It was just gone. That thought of ending that reign just gone. But you see how Saban has suffered some pretty huge losses in recent years, Mark. He sees the recruiting landscape changing from just the bagmen to now you got to go into a dealership. You got to get the lawyers you got on your side. You got all these different people, all these NIL things, all these antitrust legislation. I mean, Saban's like, oh my God, give me a whiskey. He's going nuts. He wants it to go back to 2005 where just here's the money. Give me Marcus Spears. See ya. He wants it easy. He's threatened. He's frustrated. I think Saban said some stupid stuff about Jackson State. Really, when you listen to what he says about Texas A&M, he doesn't really say anything that's too wrong if you look at the true context of it. He's basically saying they bought all their players. I read it in the paper. He's not really saying like they bought all their players, condemn them, crucify Jimbo Fisher right now at noon in front of Dan Rather. He's just saying like they're buying all their players. I need money, damn it. Give me that money. He's basically just talking to his boosters like, give me that money. And it became this huge thing. But once he said this stuff about Jackson State and his Aflac partner, Deion Sanders, whoa. I mean, when you talk about the lack of resources, the lack of attention, the lack of really any attention, any advantages whatsoever for these HBCUs, and they finally, have this huge breakthrough, a historic breakthrough, to get Travis Hunter, the number 1 overall player or number 2 overall player in the class, to come, to eschew Florida State, Deion's own alma mater. He heard his own alma mater to bring him to an HBCU. I mean, it was a huge accomplishment. And Saban basically just soiled all over it, just was like, yeah, you paid your player. And it's like, they denied it immediately. And when you look at how much Travis Hunter is making NIL wise, it doesn't add up to him just getting a cool million or something out of the gate, like the raw data on his NIL numbers, his earnings. It wasn't just a cool million out in the front. Saban is feeling the pressure, Mark. And now with Brian Kelly in the division, I think there's going to be some highly emotional games. There's going to be some games where you don't like how the refs called this. This guy got hurt, and it's affecting me a little bit. And so then this happens, and now I'm pissed off, and something's said at a press conference. And then the coach is coming back at it. And this is the theater of college football that we love, Mark. This is why we watch the game. It's not just coaches hating each other, but it's the competition, man. It's, everyone's going to be watching October 8th. You know why? Because one guy wants to kick the other guy's ass. And no matter what's going on in this country, what's going on in this world, that's entertaining. That's entertaining when it comes down to a sports level. When it comes down to a mano-a-mano competitive, who's going to win showdown, it's always entertaining. It's always entertaining. We don't want to see Jimbo and Saban headbutting each other, coming to blows. But if it happened, would you say it wasn't entertaining? I mean,
and that was my take on it in regards to, I had a lot of takes about what it meant, but in terms of the entertainment part of it, I said, you know what? I'm typically not into this kind of stuff, but I got to admit, this captivated me. This was theater that was must-see TV.
It was mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. Imagine if I was just thinking about, imagine if you were like a reporter one-on-one and Jimbo Fisher gave you those quotes alone, not a press conference where everyone gets it. But imagine you're holding the nuclear codes in your hand. Oh my God, Jimbo, what he said about Nick Saban was just so unparalleled. I threw out these names: Arsene Wenger and Jose Mourinho, these soccer coaches. Arsenal's former soccer coach, and Jose Mourinho, who used to coach Chelsea FC, and big London rivals.
This is where you've lost me, Lonn, but you continue. I'm just going to have to take your word for it.
These two hated each other, and they were always saying these crazy lines in the media, going back and forth, and they would come to kind of weird fisticuffs on the sideline. That is exactly what we got from college football finally. We haven't had that in college football for a long time. Can you think of two coaches who actually went at each other like that? It was very, very, very beyond rare. It was crazy.
Absolutely. And if anyone wants to hear what I have to say and others on the matter, we were here going live. We posted videos. We were all over it for days and days and days. So do we know the truth? No, we don't. But I think we can piece some things together to understand a changing landscape in college football is not pleasing one Nick Saban, and he was not clear with his comments, and that's why he walked them back the next day. But he very much stated in a way that Texas A&M is cheating. They're buying players. He should have stated it if he wasn't accusing them of cheating, to say, we've got a different landscape in college football. This is what it's all about now. You need resources, and Texas A&M is able to do it this way. And yes, to your point, it had to be taken into context who he was speaking to basically say, pony up, we need your help. We got to keep up with those guys.
Yeah, because that's what it is. It's an arms race.
It's an arms race that I would like again, some regulations to be there. I do want the guys to be able to benefit and fully take advantage of name, image, and likeness. Absolutely, they're Americans. It's a free market system. Absolutely, but I do think that there do need to be a few things in place to rein it in that won't necessarily rein it in financially to limit their financial resources. It's more about structure, things being above board, things being out in the open. It's their own private matters, not from that standpoint, but in terms of the schools and the conferences and all of that being above board and transparent for all of us to see. Lonn, we talked a lot of recruiting. You gave us a lot of great detail in recruiting. So I'm going to swing this back and do a 180 back to recruiting because I continue to be fascinated and impressed with the amount of talent in Louisiana. Produces more NFL talent than any state per capita.
Yes.
And I just, I don't know if you're going to be able to unveil the secret down there. Besides, they just care so much that they put that type of time and effort into developing those players. And then there's just it must be the golf. It must be the water, something, the bayou that just breeds football talent.
I think it's like this tradition coupled with just the work ethic and the situations a lot of people find themselves in. It didn't really matter how rich or how poor you were when something like Hurricane Katrina went down. Everybody was losing their homes. There's that kind of equality across the board in Louisiana where everybody's kind of in this together in a way. And I feel like that type of camaraderie, that type of individual, I can push to the next level. I can find another gear. I can get through this. I can push through this adversity. I can rise above. I think that is a type of tradition that has become infectious. And you just have these young men who are just looking up to Tyrann Mathieu, looking up to Justin Jefferson, looking up to Jamar Chase now, and Joe Burrow, even though he's from Ohio, they feel like he's one of theirs now, like because he acts like he's from Louisiana. There's a vibe and he has adapted that. And, there's so many of these Louisiana emblems they're looking at and so many great coaches throughout the high schools too, who understand the game, who understand the tradition as well, because they were just like these recruits as well themselves. You can always find these crazy lines of coaching trajectories and genealogy trees of coaches in a way where it's like, oh my God, that guy coached that dude in that high school. And oh God, yeah, he went to St. Augustine. Oh yeah, he went here. Oh wow, he coached there at that time. Like they're always so interconnected. The Louisiana high schools, they're always producing top talent. The scouts always know they're there. They haven't always had the best facilities, but they've still churned out the best talent. How does that happen? Why? Because it's the work ethic. It's purely the work ethic. If mom or dad are working 2 jobs out there to feed you, then you're going to be doing whatever damn takes to get through school, ace everything, and then be a freak on the football field, tear heads off on the football field. It's a vibe in Louisiana. They love their football, but it's also a way of life too. It was something to see when I went down there. Near just under 2 weeks straight of just craziness, nonstop into the underbelly of Louisiana football. And it was just great to see everything and experience how much they do love this game. But it's more than that, Mark. It's definitely more than that. It's something that's hard to quantify.
John, we appreciate you being here, always here during our live shows. But John makes a comment here between Nick and Jimbo. Jimbo was way more out of line because Nick was talking to boosters. Jimbo called a press conference to throw all his toys out the playpen. Well, I get your point, and your point's valid. However, this is not 1985. We have something called the internet. Everybody's a walking television station if you want to throw it back to 1985. We have just as much resource basically to throw out video that can be seen around the world. So in some aspects, we've got more power than a television station did 35 years ago in our pocket. So Nick Saban should know that anything that's stated in public to anyone, a gathering of 5 people can be worldwide like that. And it's the same forum regardless. The group of people's inconsequential. It's going on the internet, and everybody's going to be able to see it regardless of whether you call a news conference or you're talking to a bunch of boosters.
That was a question I had for you, Mark. That was something I wanted to ask you the second this happened. Everyone talks about Nick Saban. Like, okay, everything out of his mouth is so calculated. He is never going to say anything that isn't for a reason. He's so all about his design, all this stuff. Do you think he was speaking out of his ass for once? For finally, he kind of lost it a bit. Do you think?
I think that's a reasonable take on your part, because I made a similar one, because he is calculated, measured.
Yeah.
This is a guy that has never stated anything that's going to be circulated that wasn't intended for his current players, future players, the media, the fans, to make some kind of point about the state of Alabama, or to, in a very calculated professional way, diss his rivals, or talk about the state of college football and what needs to be changed in a very wink wink sort of way. And this was, because when have we ever known, and this leads right to your point, Lonn, when have we ever known Nick Saban to walk back his comments?
I only time I've ever seen him walk back a comment is, I'm staying in Miami. That is it.
Well,
other than that, he also said I'm staying at LSU as well. But other than those two, Nick, it was just weird that he would, just the whole spectacle. He knew that he had upset so many people, and also on a racial level too, with his comments at Deion Sanders. Anyone saying that there isn't a racial tone that is there for why people are upset with what he said. It's about how historically black colleges have had almost every disadvantage against them, even in the 21st century. And they finally get a great player coming in here, a huge historical boost. And just because Saban couldn't get that one toy, even though he has a room full of them overpiling out the door, he couldn't get that one toy. He had to kind of belittle and go at them, lump them in with A&M. And I didn't appreciate that at all. I thought that was just the rest was hilarious, but that was just the one part that got nasty to me. And Deion Sanders has every right to be pissed.
John comes back with, that's a fair response, Mark, but Jimbo should have taken Nick's audience for his comments into consideration before he responded. So I can understand your point concerning that. However, Nick Saban, again, he needed to realize who he was speaking to, meaning the world, when he was speaking to these boosters. And he either regretted what he had to say, truly regretted what he had to say the next day, or he still stood by it but thought, I wasn't clear, so I've got to talk this back to be more clear about what I had to say. Because actually, what Nick Saban said that was the most meaningful about the landscape of college football is that this is a broken model. It's not sustainable. But that got completely lost. Anytime you start attacking people, that's going to take center stage. And that's what people are going to be intrigued by and excited about and focused on, the theater, to your point, the theater, not Nick Saban saying this is not a sustainable model. We need to do something about it. The NCAA's hands are tied. So somebody do something about this. That got completely lost. So Nick Saban, me believing that was his message that was paramount and overriding, he, for one of the few times in his life, misspoke and did not allow his narrative to get out there because it got ambushed by everything else he had to say attacking people.
Yes.
And then Jimbo, I can respect him defending himself and his coaching staff in the university. He just doesn't do it well. It's just not his. Like Lane, if we take this all the way back to National Signing Day, Lonn, Lane Kiffin was the guy first who was out of line, basically throwing up his hands and making snide remarks about luxury taxes at Texas and Texas A&M. Well, Lane, if we want to tell the truth and be straightforward about this, then there could be another 100 coaches coaching FBS football teams. They could look at you and say, well, we don't have Ole Miss's money and we can't be paying players to the level of Ole Miss. So there's always somebody else that you can attack. So your snide remarks seemed a bit whiny and childlike. But then, of course, Jimbo probably should have just left those alone, but he went on the attack. And then, of course, he goes on the attack with Saban. He just doesn't do it well. I had no issue with him responding. It's just not, he is not a guy that you can follow from point A to B to C. It's just all over the place.
Yes. There's times that I'll admit, as a speaker, I am nowhere near as eloquent as I am as a writer. There's times that I just ADHD just wander, and Jimbo was basically doing that, some non sequiturs, but at the same time, I think it was something we will probably never see again. Do you think, Mark? That type of just abrasive honesty, like Jimbo just kept going with one tidbit. Usually people kind of go, oh my God, like the media are loving this and we know what the media are about. Okay, I'm going to stop. And they kind of just, okay, I'm going to shut down right there. I gave him a few, oh crap, I'm done. He just kept going and going. Someone's trying to ask him a question. He interrupts the question by continuing to go. The people are trying to ask him questions about other things. They're not even continuing to ask him questions about that. Like, he's even wearing the media out on this issue, or at least making them feel awkward or something, which is insane, because I would have been in there like, well, you just opened the door. What did you learn from Saban at LSU? Like you just said it. What did you learn? I would want to get him on the record revealing that, because you can't open the door like that, Jimbo, and not go all the way through. But I think he didn't want to repeat what Nick did, which was cross a huge coaching line. Never, ever, ever, get my program's name out your mouth, like the Will Smith thing. It was just, you cannot talk about how I build my program. It was just like this, cannot talk about how I get my players thing. And, Saban just crossed that completely. And, Saban talking about tampering with players, like we've never tampered with players ever. No. It's like listening to Nixon talk about Watergate. Like, bro, like you saying you haven't tampered with players when Kayshon Boutte had to take a second NIL payment of $100K from Gordon McKernan, personal injury attorney Gordon McKernan, just to stay at LSU, just right before the transfer deadline on May 1st. That was the second time he had to get a payment to stay at Alabama. So you're not telling me he's not tampering with players? Jordan Addison, I definitely have 100% sources from my USC contacts who have told me 100% Jordan Addison early in his process was tampered with by Alabama and USC as well. Of course, we all know that Narduzzi and Lincoln Riley had that big time fisticuffs over that. That also happened with Nick Saban. I don't know if there was a call or if it was a text or if it was just hurt feelings in the shadows. I haven't had a word of a conversation between the two going down, but if Pitt knew Addison was tampered with by Alabama, LSU knew Boutte was tampered with by Alabama. Alabama have Eli Ricks was tampered with by Alabama, 100% certainty. I understand Eli Ricks, Bryce Young, close friendship and relationship. That Bryce Young could have been the one to invite him. Who am I to say? Maybe I got that wrong, but feels kind of interesting. The timing, Saban was right there to pounce. Saban saying some of these things that just aren't just completely untrue. He's never paid for a player in his entire history. Do you believe that, Mark, that he never has paid for a player?
Well, I'm going to go back to your previous comment before I answer that one. And when you mentioned tampering, that you're close to 100% sure that there was tampering, but then you mentioned Bryce Young, other players having that contact.
Yeah.
That's allowed. So when you say tampering, are you talking about coaches going through players, or are you talking about coaches going directly to the player?
I was just meaning there could be a possibility that Eli Ricks could have been tampered with, but then maybe he could have also been persuaded to go by Bryce Young, his close friendship. But if Alabama's coaching staff don't think about that, don't make that connection and just go after Eli Ricks first, then it is tampering. The player has to reach out, is what my understanding is, for it not to be tampering. As long as they're still committed. Once they decommit, then it's all, every team going at him for it, a rat race. But Saban, I just felt like, said some clear untruths, that was just kind of really made me feel icky about. And I'm a big Saban fan. I'm a big time Saban guy. Saban was my first favorite coach, really. I love Dick Vermeil for that Greatest Show on Turf and the St. Louis Rams team. Love that dude. But Nick Saban leading my LSU Tigers to some type of worthiness with the 2001 Sugar Bowl and then the 2003 National Championship, delivering the roster for the 2007 team. I'm a huge Saban loyalist in a lot of ways, but I cannot get down with what he did, even if a lot of what he said was true.
So when you ask me the question, do I think that Saban's ever paid players? Well, I'll answer it this way. As soon as you mentioned that, I was trying to scan through the history of college football as quickly as I could to find any time that there has been allegations have been proven about paying a player, or that player needing help to be eligible, whether that's, unlawfully, keeping them eligible in terms of their grades and attendance and those sorts of things. So whether it's money related or academics related, most of the time that stuff comes out not a long, 20 years later, but it comes out 2, 3, 4 years later, once the player moves on. And then people start to question. He gets called by reporters who are interested. And then there's no longer any, at least from the player standpoint, there's no longer any need to cover things up, and things leak out. And you usually find these things out 3 to 5 years later. Okay. Well, Nick Saban, with the NIL starting, he's getting further removed from the possibility of anything being found out. Nothing's been found out or widely reported about him ever cheating. So I think he's fairly safe. And so, of course, he's never going to admit to it. And now that paying players, and again, there are a lot of guidelines and rules. You can't just flat out pay them. Of course, the school can't get involved except for the managing the connections and the collective and the accounting portion of it. It's going to be very difficult to catch anyone cheating in the future because there's money exchanged. So I just think that he's even safer, as are all college football coaches going ahead into the future, because it's going to be difficult to distinguish and find out true cheating in the future.
Oh God, yeah. Right now it's an absolute mess. And like you said, there has to be some type of regulation, because the NIL advantages of some of these schools above, 98% of the other schools in college football could really hurt the entire product. I think you could see an effect go from Division I down to Division II even. and FBS, I think you can see a ripple effect of just a drainage of talent from these smaller schools. You know, you're gonna see these smaller schools put in all the work. You know, Pitt recruiting Jordan Addison, finding him, and then having him after they've done all the hard work, he gets ripped away from him to go to an SEC school. I think you're gonna see so much of that where these smaller schools really do their homework, really use their limited resources, get a guy onto their campus, and then just see him go. Maybe even a year or two later. There's many reasons why these players are transferring. It's not just NIL. There's personal reasons. There's things that go down, and they got to leave a situation. There's academics, all sorts of stuff, you know. But it's not always just for money. But it's become such an enticing thing, and it's hard to blame any of these players for giving in when you know, you got a Keyshawn Booty and you got Alabama saying, "Hey, we'll give you $250K if you come play for Alabama," and instead he chooses LSU for only $100K. You know, whatever the situation, you know, that type of thing. I can't blame the players because it's such a Wild West situation. They've been denied for so long. You can't really fault a football player, a young football player who understands a lot more about concussions nowadays than they used to, understands a lot more about debilitating injuries and long-term health, and says, "Hey, I'm going to earn as much as I can while I can," you know.
Gary letting us know that Lonn's on fire, tearing it up here for us. We appreciate Lonn being here. LSU Odyssey, get on over there. Check out Lonn's work. LSU Odyssey. We'll have the banner up here very quickly. So Lonn, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I'm gonna state 3 provisions off the top of my head. I've stated this a number of times, but if I really gave it thought, pen to paper, if I had responsibility for NIL, maybe I could do better. But I'll give you these 3 criteria that I would like to see enforced. Yes. And they are all 3 already rules. They're already rules. They just need to be enforced. Rule number 1, I want there to be maintained purity in the recruiting process and the selection that the student athlete makes for a school. Meaning, just like it's against NCAA rules, and therefore a player becomes ineligible if they have contact with an agent while they're a collegiate player, because we keep them separated from their college status and the NFL. I think we should keep high school players separated, their status as high school players, to college football, meaning that they should have no contact with a collective or an NIL suitor until they have chosen their school, committed, signed, enrolled. That their college decision should be solely based on everything that it's always been based on regarding where do I want to play football, where do I want to go to school, what kind of degree do I want to earn, who have I built relationships with. And obviously that information concerning who has great NIL opportunities is going to be out there for them to know. So they're not going to be ignorant to it. But I don't want them cutting NIL deals before they enroll in school. Number 1. Okay. Number 2, I want the transfer portal to be honored as a one-time transfer rule, because I think this comes to the core of why most college football fans are bothered by this whole process, and that's players jumping from team to team to team to team to team. And when the transfer portal really started humming, as you well know, Lonn, here in the last couple of years, we were thinking of it pre-NIL as players just thinking, you know, I'm sick of this place, or don't like my position coach anymore, or I just broke up with my girlfriend and I don't want to see her anymore, or I didn't like the cafeteria food this morning, I'm transferring, whatever, just on a whim that they could transfer. And none of us like that. But now it's the perception that a guy, especially a name player, an impact player, transferred because got more money. So enforce the one-time transfer rule. That's number 2. And then after that, I just want to know that these NIL deals are truly exchanges of services. They're supposed to be doing something for the NIL. And I know in many cases they are. They're involved in podcasting. They're posting things on Instagram. Bo Nix is, he was the first one that I remember actually where I knew tangibly that there was an NIL deal where he was selling iced tea. Fine, great. That's what it should be. But I'm also hearing about money being exchanged, and the guy's just an offensive lineman for whomever. I'm not going to name a school, and he's just kind of getting paid for it. Well, it's supposed to be name, image, and likeness. There's supposed to be some kind of exchange of goods and services here.
Some type of advertising, some type of showmanship, some type of work to back it, some type of appearance, and there's actually an NIL project that I'm on the cusp of here with some really incredible people. Someone who has a crazy NFL background, someone who is a New Orleans businessman, and they've invited me to spearhead some type of project in some form. I'm not exactly sure what my final role could be or will be, but the project is very innovative, and that's the thing is I feel like with NIL it's got to be about, does this have any use for the player? Does this have any use for people, for businesses to get in contact with the player? Does this have a win-win situation for the community as well? That's what I think it should be the goal here. Because when I've seen NIL done right at LSU, which has been with a lot of these big time players doing a lot of deals with these small businesses, that's another great thing about NIL for LSU is you've got so many thriving smaller businesses, thriving traditional businesses that people love to support, and they love to see players repping their hometown businesses as well. It's such a win-win of sponsorship. We have our own NIL deal with Jack Besh, wide receiver at LSU. The first second that NIL was available, possible, we paid him and said, we'd love to have you part of the Odyssey team. And ever since he's been, and we haven't been wheeling and dealing in the NIL world, but the more and more I find out about it, the more I feel like this, if directed, if harnessed in the right ways possible, this could be the best thing for college football that's happened in a long time, since like maybe even the college football playoff or something like that, and maybe since the transfer. That's the thing is I love the transfer portal. I think it's a great thing to have, but like you said, Mark, team to team to team to team, it's not just about, people say, well, it's just like NFL free agency. Well, you're going to school at these places. This is a social thing too. This is an academic thing. It's a lot deeper than just floating around from team to team to team. It's so much more than that. And the kids know it, the parents know it, the coaches know it, everybody knows it. It's, what are your priorities? What are the team's priorities? What are some of these coaches? How is their moral compass? Do they want a team of mercenaries? Are they okay with that? It's, Mark, the pay for play thing. It's like you think Rod Blagojevich is going to be the head coach of Vanderbilt next year or something. Like, the pay for play, perfect for me. I'll slide right in here. Like, it's a very weird landscape, Mark. College football has never been this bizarre, and Saban, Fisher, that fits right into it, Mark, doesn't it? The tone of everything going on.
It certainly does. And NFL free agency exists when the player's contract has expired. What is a scholarship? It's a contract.
That's a great point. That is literally exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. So that's a hell of a point. And that's the thing too, is NFL free agency has its limits, has its time, when doesn't it? When NFL free agency closes, the trade, some type of trade deadline, right? With the NFL.
Sure.
Don't they have that? I'm wondering if they have that.
Absolutely.
Like the NBA. And so just transferring whenever you want. Like right now, Miles Brennan could still transfer to Nebraska per the rules. He couldn't transfer to an SEC team, but he could transfer to like Nebraska or say Washington or Oregon or whatever, some team out of conference. He could definitely do that because of these rules right now. He could do that tomorrow. The rules are very all over the place. They're vague. They're easy to take advantage of, though, if you can find them and figure them out. And there's been a few times I've been able to kind of look, go through the weeds and find some of these things and bring them to a few people's attention and do some damage in a few situations. But it's very, Mark. It's all over the place. It is insane what's going on with college football. They've got to rein it in. Give it some type of limits, not like you said, not limiting the money, limiting the absolute circus that goes with it.
Yeah, I'm not going to completely address this comment by Falconer X. So he likes the ideas, thinks they're commonsensical that I've provided, but also says we cannot, restrict free people to make personal business decisions with their bodies and life. It must be open, but at the same time, let's understand within the free marketplace of America, yes, it's generally open, but there are still restrictions and regulations for the better good of everyone involved.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't just sell toys made completely with like poisonous lead and mercury or something. Like the times have changed where like the free market doesn't mean completely free to just poison and destroy and do whatever you want. Like it's a whole different ballgame. I understand there is probably way too much government regulation of business at times out there with the government, but when we're not talking about that, we're talking about NIL. We're talking about governing a game and for what's best for the future, the longevity of the game. What's best for the longevity of the game? And I can tell you that this, Mark, is unsustainable. Don't you think? This is just unsustainable. I feel it would have such a knock-on effect from Division 1 all down to the smaller schools into Division 2 into FBS. Just it would affect so many players who would go to certain schools. Those opportunities would be taken away. They're staying certain places, rotting on the bench maybe because they're getting paid, but they're instead of playing somewhere else and helping another school kind of rise, they're just sitting on the bench taking the money. It could affect so many different things and so many different variables, Mark. It's got to be reined in, like you said, in exactly how you said. I loved what you just said about your NIL plan and your 3 points. I feel like, to me, that's sensible. I feel like that's controlled. I feel like that's what's best for the athletes as much as what's best for the game.
And for transfers to always be available to the athlete that has a extreme situation, a sick family member, something like that, that's always available as a waiver to the transfer rule, a family situation.
I agree.
Falconer X, why restrict freedom? I am right there with you, Falconer X. There is no one who supports the free market system as much as I do. But again, if you look at any healthy organization system within this country or outside of it that promotes freedom of speech, freedom, they're limited. I am Mr. Freedom of Speech. I will trumpet that, but there have to be limitations to freedom of speech. Freedom of marketplace, the same thing. Lonn, we appreciate you. I want to first tell everyone that, yes, we do have an LSU channel. If Lonn didn't exist, we probably wouldn't have an LSU channel. So he is the main contributor. We talk to him on a regular basis. We've got Carter, who was on earlier, on a regular basis, and then I provide content as well. But beyond that, please, for as much as I want you to subscribe to our LSU channel, it is much more important that you get over to LSU Odyssey for just hardcore, thorough, informative, entertaining LSU deep dive on the Bayou Bengals every day with Lonn Phillips-Sullivan right there at LSU Odyssey.
Mark, you're the man. And seriously, do not hesitate. Subscribe to this guy. He is tireless and the voice of college football, because let's be honest here. You're all subscribing. His videos are popping up every morning when you see them. And when we are talking about these crazy different headlines, these crazy stories that define what college football is, Mark's voice is rotating around my head when we're Jimbo Fisher. Like, it's true. He is the voice of college football. It's a growing brand. Something like what, 30, 40, 50,000 subscribers. It's getting big. And Mark, it's been crazy. We've done like hundreds of episodes at this point, and it's been so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on, brother. And Carter's amazing. Everybody subscribe to Carter the Power Hour. The dude knows his LSU. Great history with LSU. Carter's awesome.
Lonn, keep grinding. It pays off. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. We appreciate it, and we're watching all the time. Get on over to LSU Odyssey. Lonn, we will be tracking you down soon. You know that. I will be in touch.
Absolutely, Mark, and we will be as well. Thank you, brother.
Absolutely. I'm going to stay on for another minute just to talk to the folks, but thank you so much for that, Lonn. Our next show is coming up on Tuesday. So we've got a doubleheader coming up on Tuesday, of course. Iowa Live at 5:30 Eastern, 4:30 Central with Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And then, of course, our Nebraska show comes your way at 7 Eastern, 6 Central with our man Greg Peterson from Husker Online. So Iowa, Nebraska on Tuesday, and we will do call-in shows throughout the week as well. So subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. When we go live, you will know it, and we will talk to you college football. I've got a video being released this on Tuesday morning looking at Alabama's 18 claimed national championships. You won't want to miss it. Our video on Alabama's claimed national championships will be delivered at noon on Tuesday, noon Eastern time on Tuesday. Cheryl, good to see you. Thanks for being here as always. Lemansky, Tim, Gary, and others, great to see you. I believe Ed is no longer with us, but happy birthday to Ed. Hopefully he caught our banner. I picked that up in the live chat as well. Jay Chillin, John, and everyone else, great to see you. And we'll be back, String, Gene, and others, coming up on Tuesday at 5:30 Eastern, 4:30 Central. That's Iowa Live. Subscribe to our LSU channel in the meantime, and we will see you on Tuesday.